We've all heard that masturbation is considered a completely normal aspect of human sexuality, but this raises important questions about boundaries and balance. How frequently can someone engage in this behavior before it becomes problematic? What happens when someone feels unable to stop? Let's explore these critical questions and examine why developing self-control in this area can significantly impact your life quality. Before diving into the sensitive but important 21st century topic, it's crucial to address how certain behaviors that appear harmless on the surface can actually create subtle traps that affect our willpower and overall well-being. This discussion will examine what happens to our brain both scientifically and philosophically, and explore what ancient wisdom traditions like Stoicism can teach us about managing our impulses and desires. Current medical consensus is remarkably clear in stating that masturbation is completely normal behavior, not only observed in humans but also documented in dogs and numerous other mammalian species. However, this accepting view of masturbation as normal wasn't always a prevailing opinion throughout history. In past centuries, particularly during the Victorian era and earlier periods, masturbation was widely considered immoral, especially for men. The reasoning behind this condemnation was rooted in the belief that unproductive production prevented people from fulfilling their reproductive duties to society. For women, the concerns were different but equally restrictive. It was believed that masturbation could create emotional and physical distance from men by allowing women to find pleasure independently, without requiring male assistance or partnership. To these moral objections, medical professionals of the time added physical concerns, claiming that masturbation caused various diseases and health complications. Consequently, the practice was strongly discouraged and sometimes even treated as a medical condition requiring intervention. Returning to our current understanding, modern research has revealed several interesting facts about masturbation, particularly regarding its effects on sleep patterns. For men suffering from insomnia, masturbation has been shown to induce sleepiness and relaxation. The French Institute of Health and Medical Research conducted comprehensive studies that concluded the male brain systematically deactivates sexual desire following orgasm. During this process, the cerebral cortex, the brain region responsible for conscious thought, planning, and decision-making, essentially goes into a rest state once climax is reached. This neurological shutdown not only eliminates the immediate desire to continue sexual activity, but also facilitates the onset of sleep. This explains why many men experience drowsiness and often fall asleep shortly after sexual activity, whether with a partner or through masturbation. However, buried within these apparent benefits lies a potentially significant problem. Masturbation triggers a release of dopamine in your brain, a powerful neurotransmitter that serves as a foundation of our reward system. This hormone is responsible for making us feel better, providing a sense of calm, offering relief from stress, creating feelings of relaxation, and generating a profound sense of reward and accomplishment. The dopamine release associated with sexual climax is so intensely pleasurable that some individuals can develop addictive patterns around the behavior. This isn't mere speculation. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders has formally incorporated hypersexuality disorder as a recognized condition, classifying excessive masturbation under the broader category of obsessive-compulsive disorders. This classification is significant because it represents another behavioral pattern that can lead to mental health complications and, in many cases, destruction of family relationships and social connections. When the behavior becomes compulsive, individuals often find they cannot control themselves, essentially becoming enslaved to their own impulses and falling victim to a complete lack of self-control. As this loss of control progresses, it frequently leads to seeking increasingly intense forms of stimulation. This might involve relationships with sex workers, engaging in sexual activity with multiple partners, or, as extensively documented in previous research, excessive consumption of pornography. These behaviors represent different ways that a dopamine-saturated brain attempts to obtain the same level of pleasure it once achieved through simpler means. It's crucial to understand that addiction to masturbation stems directly from the chemicals released in the brain during the activity. As our neurological system adapts to regular releases of these powerful neurotransmitters, it begins to require the stimulation continually to maintain baseline emotional states. Your brain literally starts demanding more and more dopamine to achieve the same level of pleasure it experienced initially, creating a cycle where you must constantly seek new ways to stimulate the same response. This escalation reaches a particularly problematic point when your brain recognizes that dopamine release has become excessive and begins blocking receptors in an attempt to restore balance. As a result, the person continues to perform the pleasurable act, in this case, masturbation, but receives diminishing returns, getting little to no satisfaction from the behavior. This creates more frustration than they experienced initially, leading to even more frequent attempts to achieve the desired feeling. Excessively masturbating to satisfy this insatiable hunger for pleasure follows exactly the same pattern exhibited by someone who smokes cigarettes compulsively, someone who consumes chocolate until they become physically ill, or someone struggling with alcohol addiction. The underlying neurochemical processes are remarkably similar across these different compulsive behaviors. At this point, you might be wondering what ancient Stoic philosophy has to contribute to this modern discussion. The great Stoic philosophers, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and Epictetus, were acknowledged masters of self-control and wisdom who addressed questions of pleasure and lustful desires from a remarkably sophisticated perspective. From the philosophical insights of Epicurus to the intimate personal reflections of Seneca, these ancient thinkers explored the deepest aspect of human passions, creating a legacy that continues to captivate and instruct us today. For the Stoics, masturbation wasn't simply viewed as a quest for physical satisfaction, but rather as an opportunity to explore the fundamental limits of both body and mind. They understood such behaviors as exercises in self-awareness and potential paths to achieving true personal freedom. In their comprehensive philosophical framework, mastery over worldly passions and physical pleasures represented a conquest that elevated the human spirit to higher levels of consciousness and self-understanding. Epicurus famously asserted that it is not nights of pleasure, but self-control that distinguishes a good man. In this philosophical context, the ability to enjoy pleasure while simultaneously understanding and containing it creates the fundamental difference between someone who has reached a higher level of self-awareness and someone who remains enslaved to their impulses. Instead of becoming slaves to our desires and compulsions, we must strive to become their masters. As Seneca reminds us through his extensive philosophical writings, this perspective transforms our entire relationship with pleasure and desire. Stoic reflection on masturbation isn't simply about repression or denial of natural impulses, but rather about developing deep understanding and achieving genuine self-mastery. This philosophical approach translates into practical ability to direct our emotions and impulses toward a journey of conscious self-exploration and growth. True satisfaction, from this perspective, resides not only in momentary physical gratification, but in understanding, accepting, and consciously embracing our deepest inclinations while maintaining control over them. This represents a mature, balanced approach to human sexuality and desire. From the Stoic worldview, every action we take has consequences not only for ourselves personally, but also for the natural order of the universe and our place within it. When we consistently succumb to our most intense desires, as happens in cases of uncontrolled masturbation, we lose that harmonious connection with nature that the Stoics valued so highly. We essentially become prisoners of our own desires, drifting away from a true inner serenity that comes from conscious choice and self-direction. Compulsive masturbation can trigger an emotional whirlwind within us, where feelings of guilt, shame, and deep dissatisfaction become constant, unwelcome companions in our daily lives. The Stoics teach us to control intense emotions through introspection and conscious self-regulation. By consciously facing our emotions rather than being overwhelmed by them, we learn to manage them in healthy and constructive ways that serve our long-term well-being rather than undermining it. The Stoic tradition encourages us to find genuine inner peace within ourselves, recognizing that true satisfaction lies in self-mastery and our ability to find joy in what is simple, virtuous, and aligned with our deepest values. I'd like to share an inspirational story about someone I know who struggled with compulsive masturbation for years. This individual initially sought momentary refuge and pleasure through behavior, but consistently faced an emotional storm of negative feelings after each episode. Through immersing themselves in Stoic teachings and dedicating themselves to practicing genuine self-control and emotional self-regulation, this person underwent a profound personal transformation. They learned to confront their desires and emotions consciously rather than being controlled by them, ultimately finding true joy and satisfaction in self-control rather than in momentary pleasure. This person now lives a life characterized by inner peace and authentic self-expression, having freed themselves from what they came to recognize as slavery to momentary desires. Their story demonstrates that transformation is possible when we commit to conscious growth and self-understanding. True satisfaction comes from living in accordance with our deepest principles and values rather than being driven by fleeting impulses. When we consistently yield to temporary desires without conscious consideration, we lose sight of what we truly value in life and what genuinely contributes to our long-term happiness and fulfillment. Compulsive masturbation can distance us from our noblest purposes and steer us away from the authentic happiness found in virtue, self-discipline, and inner peace. By practicing meditation, mindfulness, and conscious self-reflection, we can develop the mental serenity necessary to resist destructive temptations and face our emotions in healthy, constructive ways. This compulsive behavior becomes a significant obstacle to mental serenity, dragging us into cycles of regret and steering us away from a genuine peace found in self-control, moderation, and conscious living. Consider this honestly. What are you doing with your life? Do you believe that spending time at home watching explicit videos and seeking pleasure through solitary activities can make you truly confident, successful, and attractive to others? Do you think that after investing your time and energy in these ultimately empty pursuits, you'll be able to build meaningful relationships or attract the kind of partner you genuinely desire? The answer, if we're being completely honest, is no. True confidence, success, and attractiveness come from investing your time and energy in activities that build your character, develop your skills, contribute to your community, and align with your deepest values and aspirations. I encourage you to think wisely about how you're spending your precious time and energy. Consider writing this affirmation and truly meaning it. I am a powerful person. I have control over my mind. I choose to engage in activities that motivate me. I choose to do things that genuinely improve me as a human being. This isn't about shame or judgment. It's about recognizing your own power to make conscious choices that serve your highest good and contribute to the kind of life you truly want to live. The path to genuine fulfillment lies not in momentary pleasures, but in the deep satisfaction that comes from self-mastery, meaningful relationships, and purposeful action. Thank you for taking the time to consider these important ideas. True transformation begins with honest self-reflection and the courage to make different choices aligned with your deepest values and aspirations.